of relief tonight on your end, and how did it go from an overall standpoint, from an emotional?
Well, it was a very emotional game, for sure. At any Game 7 that you enter into, there's going to be emotion, ebbs and flows that go within the game. But again, we talked about Game 7s, and you guys wanted to talk about it a lot more than I did, obviously, because that makes your job easier when you can look at statistics and whatnot and say that we did this or we haven't done that. Well, every year there's a turnover in players on every team. And I think it's totally unfair to categorize every year that players or teams haven't had success, because a lot of the players that were there or are on the lineup now that you're criticizing or challenging aren't even on the team. But again, that's the responsibility that comes with the organization, and we don't shy away from it. We've said that before, and we're not going to ever. We have a responsibility to our fans, and that's the way we treated it. And we worked hard, and we played very well for probably 60 games of the season to get home ice advantage. And nobody can take that away from us. And if it was 2 points difference between us and the hockey club that we battled with in this round, we had home ice advantage. And there's nobody in that dressing room on their side would say that they wouldn't have wanted home ice advantage.
Randy, your players after the game talked about your ability to always adjust during the game. And tonight, you slot Richie up in the top line with Getzlaf and Perry. Just the thoughts behind that.
Well, I thought about it, doing it before, and we've done it. We have done it before. I thought about doing it before the game, but I just wanted to see the temperament of the game and how it was going, and I just felt that the way the Draisaitl, Lucic, and Kajula line had performed, specifically in the last game, I felt it was important to have more size there. That was the only thing. It was about Nick Ritchie's size. Like, Rich is he can shoot the puck, and he's just a young kid that's starting out. But he's a pretty tough kid, and he can score goals. And we're glad he's on our side. But in tonight's game, he made the difference. Now, I don't think it's a genius move by any part. I just think it's, you do those things, and we've done them all year, is move people up and down. We try to usually stay with two. For instance, if it would be Getzlaf, Perry, if it would be Vermette, Richie, or whatever the combination, and then when you make a change, you only change one player off that line.
Randy, you guys, that's a pretty high-powered team that you shut down. You didn't give them many chances. What were the things that went into that? And also, after you got the lead, it seemed like team stayed aggressive, didn't pull back like a lot of teams would.
Well, I think that the turning point in the game for us, and this is only a short window that I've been able to, review what just took place, is that our fourth line went out, and that was Nate Thompson, Jarrett Bowl, and Wagner, and got us a grind shift in the second period. And then every other line after that until the end of the second period followed that up. And we kind of had we had them on the run, as per se. And we were out changing them, and we had some momentum swings, and our crowd really got into it. So I have to credit those guys for their effort and what they did in that specific situation. I think it was about the 16-minute mark, and then we had a real solid second period, and our fans got very emotionally involved in the game, and so did our players. But we did it the right way.
Randy, your team controlled the bulk of this game. I was curious if you could put into perspective how tough of a challenge this Oiler team was to face and match up against, and also just kind of the growth you've seen from an opponent like this from the start of the season to the end, and do they remind you of any other team with some of the young stars that they have?
Well, obviously, if you go 7 games with a hockey club and you lose the first 2 in your building, they've done a lot of good things over there, and they got a lot of talent. They got the most dynamic young player in the league right now. But I think that we and maybe I would point the direction or point the finger at you guys for disrespecting our hockey club for the youth that we have. Nobody ever seems to take a look and say, well, you know, we've got 5 or 6 young players in the league. They're just cutting their teeth and making positive impacts into games, whereas on the other side of the fence, there's a plethora of media that comes from the Canadian side, and we understand that. But bottom line is you have 2 hockey clubs that competed very hard, and there's no way that you could discount the effort that their young players and the growth that they had. But I'd like to correct some people and say, hey, we have some young players that played pretty good too.
Randy, Todd was just in here and he was talking about his team, and he said after the game he looked around the room and he saw a group that was a little tired, banged up, and a lot thinner than when they started the playoffs. What did you see tonight when you looked around your dressing room after the game?
Well, I didn't stay in there that long, to tell you the truth, because I think that the dressing room is their sanctuary, and I know that I've been in our room and we're beat up. We're people have bumps and bruises. I know I get the reports from their medical staff. You know, the playoffs do tend to take a pound of flesh off of every team. And it's always important that you get proper rest, proper nutrition. And we try to sell a program here that states a bunch of different things to play in the NHL playoffs. You're going to have to do, there's 20 things that we list. And we list those and we make sure that they pay attention to them. And they're not going to do every one to the T, but if they could take 10 of them, we could get 50% of it, we think that's a huge, huge advantage.
Randy, you mentioned the youth of your team, and one of your young players, Shea Theodore, had a tough moment on that first goal. Did you address him on the bench or in intermission to
Didn't
talk
say
to
a
him
word
about
to
that?
him. In this situation, how are you going to say a word? He came out, and in reviewing it, when I reviewed it between periods, he probably should have went out the other side of the net, but he came out the same side as the puck was reversed, and he got caught. And they made a good play and slapped his stick and put the puck in the net. Surprised our goalie, whatever. But as you saw, that one goal in our minds, and that's what our mandate was, is that whatever happens, we're not going to change what we do. And we've been through some ebbs and flows in this series, and you have to credit our players with sticking to the program, buying in and saying, hey, we know we're a good hockey club, and we can play with most teams that we've played against throughout the course of the season. And in the playoffs, if we get into a long, drawn-out series, we think that we can have success. Now, I'm sure every team feels the same way. Now we're down to the Final Four.
And you mentioned the Wagner, Bull, Thompson line, their shift in the second period. They got a lot of time in this game. Was that because you wanted to keep lines fresh or as a reward for their play?
Well, I just think that the addition of their line and the mass that they make up, that they put a temperament on the game that we would not be pushed around. And it was simple as that. I felt in the last game in Edmonton, in a 7-1 game, that there was some issues that we weren't really happy about from a physical standpoint. We were receiving, and we were not going to receive in Game 7.